So I got this question about comics and both the print sizes and the die cuts, fold outs, those kinds of things. Why don't we see more of it as an art form? Shouldn't we see more experimentation? Why is everything so uniform in comics? Well, there's an easy answer and then there's a really complex answer. So I'll hit both. Hey everybody, this is Perch. It's an interesting question. I got the question of why is it that there is not more diversity, and by diversity in this I mean why more difference in things like page sizes, in fold out pages, in pop ups or die cuts or those things. Why is it that for such a creative endeavor, why is it that comics are pretty much uniform and the same? And there's one answer to that, but I want to qualify because somebody else pointed out, this is dating back a little bit ago, why is it that graphic novels of comics are often kind of random sizes? Why is it that there's a lot of difference there? You have one that's small, you have rectangular, you have all this other stuff. And if you're a collector on your shelf, it's annoying because if you're a ADHD like me, you like to just have a nice solid line of comics. You don't like this kind of crazy patchwork of sizes and shapes and things. Well, the simple answer, and the reason why kind of both are the same answer, and that is that typically comics are they're not a giant volume business, so therefore you look for economies of scale, meaning the books and the comics and everything else you want to print. If you're printing floppies, you're wanting to print the same run, the same size, the same structure, everything from if you're going to change page size, then the artist is going to have to do something different. The scanning is going to be different. The lettering. I mean, anytime you make a change, then you're impacting kind of the uniformity of the print run. And if you're impacting the uniformity of the print run, you're adding cost. Is a general comment. Now, by that same token, though, for graphic novels, typically because you are shipping to larger places, you're shipping to a bigger market, you will see kind of the opposite. You'll see comic books are ganged, which means grouped, with other jobs, meaning books and educational things and textbooks and all kinds of other things. So a publisher, the printer, will basically offer not discounts, but they'll try and get these books, these different print jobs into as similar a format as possible. They're not going to print, Watchmen in one size and this educational textbook in another and this coloring book in another. And, they're going to try and say, okay, let's get all of these very different things into a similar format, similar paper, similar size, similar extra, because that will provide us some economies of scale, meaning we'll be able to send a bigger print job. And by the way, if you're, somebody like Peter Samedi, for example, who knows a lot about the printing the side of the world, you're like, well, there's some details in there. There's definitely some details in the answer I just gave, but if you're a Random House or you're a large, Penguin or somebody like that, you're going to take a bunch of different books, you're going to try and create one print run, and you're going to loop them all together. That just tends to be how you do it. Now, great. So you've done that, and you've got some comic books, you got some textbooks, but that's why if you go into like your Barnes and Noble, you're getting a giant graphic novel size. That's why you're getting what you're getting. Now, why is it that's those are kind of simple answers. It's all about scale. You want to get as many books out with the same print run as humanly possible, and that just gives you some nice some nice print runs that you can work against. So I said there was a more complex answer, and the more complex answer is simply that the kind of the other economies of scale, the creator. Even though comics are a creative endeavor, and even though people like to put their their heart and their soul and kind of their ideas into these books, they're also by and large freelancers. Most of the comics that you read are done by somebody who's hired by a big company. They're not they're not books that are passion projects by a creator who really has a vision for a page. It's somebody like a Marvel wants to produce this graphic novel of Captain America's original OGN, or maybe this issue, and so they're hiring a freelancer and they're coming in and they're doing their art, they're doing their style, and they're paying them a page rate. And generally there's a cram down going on a page cost where the creator is can you get this page done for $150 or whatever it happens to be. That's don't take those numbers, but just a standard number. And so the editor and the company, in many cases, is going to look for how you get cheaper and cheaper page rates going with these comics. Okay, so if you're living in that world, then as the creator, if you have this idea for this dynamic big fold out page, this other thing, and if you remember Ultimates 2, Mark Miller and Brian Hitch had this giant fold out picture of the Asgardian war of kind of Ragnarok on Earth and the Avengers fighting all the Asgardians, all the heroes fighting, and there's a note from Mark Miller about how much he had to fight for that. Now keep in mind, this was a hugely selling title. It had a lot of push behind it. There was a lot of effort and motivation and energy, and it was a known seller. But despite that, he still had to fight for this because it was going to cost more. It was going to change. And if you're a Brian Hitch or a Miller, other than kind of personal pride to get something like this done, you just don't have a lot of energy. You don't have a lot of motivation to push for this. You may have this idea, but chances are your editor's going to reject it, and then it's going to cost the company more. And it's just like you'd want to save that for your own pet project. And when it is your own pet project, you probably don't have the money anyway to do special print runs and do kind of unique pages and all the rest. None of these things work out. When you have the money, you're working for a bigger company, they're not going to let you do it. When you're working for yourself or you have more creative control, you don't have the money. And therefore, kind of it fails at both ends. So that's why you see a lot more uniformity. It is a business of kind of put things out and produce, and unique ideas are more expensive ideas, and therefore often don't get off the drawing board, so to speak. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it all. I'll tag on to this because it's another question. It's probably worth a video as well, just on its own. But like I said, Peter Simeti, who's done a lot of this, has talked about this topic a lot. So it's better to just why repeat what he says. Why don't comic book companies go to newsprint? That would drive down their printing costs, and therefore they would be able to offer comics for cheaper and all the rest. Well, the short answer to that is that, first of all, once again, it's a complicated topic. But the challenge is that it's not just newsprint that is the problem. The goal of Marvel is not necessarily to cut costs of their printing by a certain amount. The goal of Marvel is to make a certain revenue targets. And so if you're trying to play this game, if you're Marvel and you suddenly switch to newsprint costs, and let's say that drops your printing costs, say 50%, it's an amazing number. Now you're going to make more profit. You would then also, in theory, have to drop your cover price from $3.99 to say $2.50. If you were to do that, you don't have the guarantee that you're going to sell the additional issues to make up that gap. Now, granted, you're making more profit per comic, but you're not making more profit per comic that would cover the gap that you're likely to create. Or if you're Marvel, you could just keep the price at $3.99. You could try that, but Marvel knows, and they would be right, that there would be an uproar from people of saying, well, wait a minute, now you're going to cheaper paper, cheaper printing, and you're charging me the same amount of money. That doesn't work. So Marvel's trapped in a bit of and DC and all of them, they're trapped in a bit of a mess because they can start certainly printing cheaper, but then they would have to offer a cheaper cover price. And if they offer a cheaper cover price, they'd have to have some guarantees that the scale would work for them, because they can't go back to their parents. They can't go to the market and say, yeah, we lowered our price, but we believe that this is going to make up in volume in X amount of days. It's a hard argument for a printing business like this to make. They've got to show signs going up, and a price cut, and then you're also talking about the volume of price cut. If Marvel and DC could probably pull it off if they said, yeah, we're going from, $3.99 books to, $3 books. The problem is, I don't believe the market would accept a $1 price cut for newsprint. People would expect more. And it's not a clean argument to make to the market or to anyone else to say, hey, I'd like to, we as a company decided to cut our page quality and cut our page rate and offer this other, something else would have to go along with it. Like, for example, if Marvel and DC said, hey, we struck a deal with, whatever the newsstand is today. I don't know what the newsstand is today, but we've struck a deal in all the grocery stores, everywhere there's magazines, all across the country. There will now be comic books. And to do that, we're dropping the price and we're printing on newsprint. The direct market may still have nicer paper and a higher cover price, but this is what we're doing. If it was wrapped in an answer like that, the market would probably accept it. But even then, people tend to raise eyebrows when you lower your cost of goods, unless you've got a really good story behind it. Now, should that be the case? Yeah, probably not, but that does tend to be how people look at it. So there you go. There's a handful of answers around paper, page quality, pricing, who has control over what. Kind of a mixed bag here. I hope that answered your question. And if you've got more, or any of you have more, leave them in the comments below. I will try and answer, do the best I can. Hopefully this made some sense. Like, subscribe, share with a friend if you don't mind. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.